Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Coffee Club. We created this club to provide a safe space for women to share and inspire each other and to learn from a different presenter each week. We're so grateful for Dr. Janet to be our presenter this morning. She's an expert in leadership topic. So, Dr. Janet, with that, I'm just going to ask you to share your background with us and then to tell us why this is such an important topic for you. Please.
Oh, well, thank you. It is an honor to be here. And for me, it's early to be diving into all of this, but I wake up when I see all of your beautiful faces and your names, and some of you I know, and some of you it's been a long time, and some are new. So it's a real pleasure to meet all of you. And here's old Mecca. I'm going to go ahead and admit her too. All right. So a little background about me and how I got into leadership. I was kind of thinking of that today. Faith is in the waiting room. I don't know. Are you seeing these two,
No,
Ryan?
I don't see, you have to let them in because I don't see them anymore. Maybe I can make both of
No,
us
it's
host.
okay. I'm happy to welcome and admit all of you.
Okay.
So I started out, I'm now almost a year back in northern Arizona. And that's kind of where I started out in my career. So when I was very young, in my 20s, I left Michigan, which was my home at that time where I was born and raised, and wanted to teach and work with Native Americans. So I had a background at that time in English as a second language, teaching English as a second language. So I applied with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and received a government position in northern, way farther than I am, farther north, in a little town called Tuba City, kind of on the way to the Grand Canyon. And very isolate, desolate, remote location, and very, very different from anything I had ever known. So I remember flying out like on a Thanksgiving weekend so I could see what it's like and do I want to make this decision to leave my home and everything I know to come and work with the Native Americans. And it was the Navajo tribe. They are right across the street, or literally on the other side of the road from the Hopi tribe. So I was kind of in between and amidst both of those tribes. But when I did come out for that visit, it was so different from anything I had ever known. I had nothing to compare it to. So often in our decision making, we do this comparative analysis, the pros and the cons, yet there was nothing that I could really grasp to make a comparison to. So I took that leap and I just came and spent 10 years on the Indian reservation with the Navajo. I think Indian is not the right word. So I apologize for that. And realized at that time that the true nature of my gifts lied more in not just teaching in the classroom, but in being able to work with the families as well. Because it wasn't the children that were difficult, it was what the children had to go home to. And they went home to a lot of abuse and alcoholism, and there weren't the drugs and the gangs that there are today. Yet it was still pretty bleak and dismal. So I went back to school and got my degree in family systems therapy and began working with the families. And then kind of branched off, and I'm going to shorten the story because it's very long, and it brought me to here where I am today in Prescott, Arizona. And at that time, I was becoming a single mom. So I was a young single mom. I had 3 kids at that time. I had my ex-husband's son, my stepson, and we are still in contact today. He's in the San Diego area, and very proud of how his life turned out. So anyway, as a single mom in this town of Prescott, Arizona, in those days, in the early 80s, was very difficult because there was a lot of stigma attached to, being single, being a woman in the workplace. So I had to work many jobs at one time in order to make ends meet as a single mom. And it just so happens there's 4 different universities here in this small little town. So I was able to teach as an adjunct faculty at each one. So I would drive from one end of town to the other, and that was like a full-time job, but it was really my part-time job because I was also full-time as an in-home family therapist. So in-home meant that I traveled all around this whole area and went into people's homes, kind of like the super nanny, and stirred things up so that I could work with those family dynamics. And these were the families that were labeled or categorized as the most high risk families of having their children removed from the home. So my job was to go in and kind of fix that family setting so that the kids could healthily and safely stay in the home. So I realized that that was a high burnout rate as well. So I did that for about 10 years. And while I was doing that and teaching, I went back to school to get my advanced degree in human and organizational development. So that's how I really became in this leadership field. So as a leader of corporate education, I was the director of academic affairs for a couple of different universities throughout the years. And at that time, I had left this location of Prescott, Arizona. And it's sort of like a hero's journey, where you leave and you gather other resources and you're searching for the Holy Grail and you come back to your original community. So it's that story of the hero's journey and how we return to where we started from. So that's, just a little in a nutshell. Also, when I was in Arizona in the early years, I did a lot of work with women's groups, women's ritual groups. And in that time, it was something you had to really be quiet about. You couldn't just put that out there because it was strange. It wasn't accepted, as was a lot of the practices that I incorporate in my work today. And all of us, are so readily accessible to things like yoga and meditation. In those days, it was called New Age, and it was, really um, kind of scorned. You had to be in the closet with it. And coming out and being just open with these new ways of healing and alternative ways of regulating our nervous system and things like that, that now we just naturally incorporate into our day. So I work with women in leadership roles who are so stressed. I was going to start this with all the statistics about, women leaders and how stressed they are and how harassed they are in the workplace and how underpaid they are and all the negatives about that. There really are a daunting amount of statistics about what women are still going through to kind of carve their place. So my story along the way as a woman, as a single woman in a small town, in a very conservative little area, was that I really had to hide a lot of who I was. I had to pretend to look like I fit in or to be someone else. And I think about that with the clients that I work with. And so many women come to me with that same story. I'm really afraid to just step in to myself in leadership and bring all of who I am into that workplace because there's generally, a director ahead of you or someone above you. And oftentimes it's a male um, boss or director or head of a program, and we're still in that place where we feel threatened. Is that true for any of y'all? And I'm going to ask you that question. You can jot things into the chat. I'll look at the chat. And I want you to take a minute to close your eyes. Yeah, I still feel like that in some circles. Absolutely. All right, Benta, it's so good to have you listening in. Yeah, so close your eyes and take a few breaths. And I want you to imagine some of the workplaces that you've been involved in through like the journey of your travels through your work life, and get an image of each or one or several of those workplace settings, because it's not only the job, the title, the role that we're in, it's the whole culture that surrounds us. It's the whole immersion that we become a part of and we feel that we have to fit into. So, what are some images that come to mind? And just whatever pops up. You can unmute yourself because we have kind of a smaller group. I don't know if you're able to do that. So, Tamara says uneasiness. Yeah. That we have a sense of, we can feel it in our bodies when we come up to the actual structure. Do you know what that feels like? I I at one time had this feeling every day that I would go to the door and my key fob wouldn't work because I was being locked out, or that feeling of being gaslighted or ghosted, or that there's a group of people talking about you, or there's something buzzing around. It's that corporate politics that we get into, and it wears on our nervous system. So anyone else have an image? Some people have used images of like prisons or a beehive, that there's just a lot of buzzing going on. You walk in and you never know what you're walking into.
It's very structured in a university where I work. It's very structured. They have their politics, and a lot of the leaders in the IT department, they're all males. Many of them are males. So it's like female in a male environment. Yeah, sometimes you're not comfortable because you don't feel like you're you have that confidence or that they're better than you.
Yeah. So it's really about having always to prove. So I often wonder, is that why I have a PhD? Did I have to prove to that point? Did I have to go that far to have two masters and a PhD that I was okay, that I could be in that male world? And I answer, no, it's because I was a single mom, and that really helped me along. So in a small town, I would have a job or hold a position, and usually it was a grant, and all of a sudden the grant would end, so the position ended too. So I went back to school. So every time I came to a roadblock, I went back to school until, that's it. I guess I could get another degree, but I think I'm done with that. So we think so much. So this presentation is about the use of self. How do I use myself as the instrument for change? Let's see if I can get to my. So we are always in discovery mode of who is the self? What is my uniqueness? How does my individuality stand out and allow me to lead from that place of just me, who I am? My authenticity is not about what degrees I have on the wall or what certificates I hold in a file cabinet. It's not about what I do. So there's this whole concept of being and doing this polarity, I guess you would say, between the being of who I am and the doing in our society for so long, and especially as women striving. We have had to come into our our leadership roles by doing and achieving and having equal to or more than. And there's always a comparison and a measure, something that defines us outside and beyond ourselves. So when we really look at our values and what I believe in, what each of you believe in, that's so true to your core, to your soul source essence. Sometimes it's called the it factor, your it factor. What is that it factor that makes you who you are? That is indestructible, undescribable, undefinable, and you are you. So Julie, wherever you go around the world, you take you. And it is that core self of who you are. So I kind of did a lot of traveling like that too when I left here. And I think back, and the reason that I left here was I was engaged to be married, not to my beloved husband, who I'm with today, but someone else. And he was really a trickster. So he held a very prestigious role at a university. He was a professor and a famous geologist and, all of this high accolades. Yet he really tricked me, and I won't go into those details because he was tricking along other women at the same time. So I had ended all of my work here at the different universities. I sold my home. I had an engagement ring and a date to get married. And then everything just kind of fell apart. So that's what ended my first stay in Prescott. So when I left here, I never imagined that I would come back, because leaving something on those kind of shaky grounds and very distraught terms, broken dreams, it's not really a place that you would think of returning to. So while I was away for about 18 years, I never thought for a moment that I missed being here. But there is a part of ourselves that there are parts of ourselves that we lose along the way. So each time we're in a workplace setting, there's a little bit of us that gets taken away. Every time we go through a heartbreak or a loss, a trauma, a little part of that wound, our original wound of childhood, gets triggered again. And those triggers continue to happen throughout our lives in different settings in the workplace. And as much as we say we're not bringing our drama into our work, it's integrated. It's a part of who we are. And also the loss of who we are shows up. So in order to really gather our whole selves back together and come into that passion of who we are, and to really claim the purpose of our individual self here on this planet Earth and what we're here for, we have to stand in that authenticity and individuality of who we are. So we pick up these pieces of ourselves along the way. So way back when I worked with different tribes, I worked with many of the different tribes in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, around this area. I learned a lot of rituals and healing ceremonies and things. So one is, I have that here. It's using a rattle. I don't have it right here, but they shake the rattle around you. Let me just take a peek. Here it is. Just as we do our bell or our healing bowl. So this is a hokey rattle. So if I shake it around a person and do a little ceremony with that rattle, it's believed that we call back the lost parts of ourselves. There's little bits of ourselves that we gave up on or we sacrificed along the way, where we said, okay, I'll fit in. I'll let go of that part of me. That doesn't matter because it's more important for me to fit in to this workplace setting, to this corporate culture. So I'll drop off some of the things that don't really matter. Have you done that before? Is that something that rings true? Can anyone relate to that?
Yes. Yes, you constantly have to prove yourself and to to show up and say that I'm worth it, that I'm able, I'm capable. You just have to, you constantly feel like you compare yourself with the other
Yeah,
counterparts and feel like you need to fit in. You need to, how do I do whatever it is so that I'm like them?
Yeah, like them. There's that kind of vague, abstract them out there. And it's that corporate culture that is like a cloak that we wear. Well, when we start off, we don't really even know what it is. It's so elusive, it's so abstract and vague, yet it's very uh, tangible also in a way because we can feel it. It's very much alive, and we wonder, how do we fit into that? How do I get to be like them? How do I get accepted? What do I have to do to look like? So I didn't really realize that I was going to talk so much about the past here. Yeah, the past is that kind of journey that brings us to where we are. So when I was very young, I was in my 20s when I first moved to be a teacher on the reservation. And, that I was just coming out of, the 60s, the flower child, and I had my little outfits on like I do again today. But at that time, again, I was really shunned because I didn't look like the other people. I was idealistic. I was happy-go-lucky. I had long, long hair, and I wore moccasins and kind of hippie clothes. Well, it's like I wear that now. But there were a lot of years where I could not dress like that I had to all of a sudden adhere to, this unspoken and sometimes very loudly spoken dress code and policy that covered who we are. So if we all dress the same, just like in grade school, many of us had uniforms. So if we all looked the same, then we would fit in more. And maybe it would stop that comparing to. Yet we're always checking, is this okay? Is that okay? What about my hairstyle? So when I finally um, I became pregnant during that time, and for some reason I cut my hair really short. And because I was pregnant, I wore maternity clothes. I kind of fit in. And all of a sudden, just that change in the way that I looked, my appearance, I was accepted by the other people. So it was like, wow, sort of magical. Being pregnant allowed me to be okay. It was like they could relate to who I was. But when I was doing yoga in my classroom with teaching my young students yoga, that was unheard of because you could not say yoga in those days or, let alone practice yoga and teach little children yoga. It was almost like that feeling of what I would imagine women went through in the time of the witch hunts. Do you have a birthmark? Do you have this? Do you have that? Are you normal or are you a witch? There are certain words that women couldn't say or certain things that women couldn't do. And we carry still all of that with us. So I want to do
Dr.
just,
Janet, I think Julie has a question or want to
oh,
make a comment.
yes, I love it.
Sorry, I've sort of lost the grip for a little bit, but I was just going to say, I grew up in New Zealand, and New Zealand was the first to give the woman the vote. So, and I think because we were a colonial country and a lot of people escaped poverty and came for the gold rush, and their wives came with them, and of course they took their problems with them. So when they got to New Zealand, they couldn't get back. And so the women became very, very strong. Yeah. because
Mm.
they had to hold the whole household together, you know. So I think that's a heritage that I came from.
Ah,
And I would have thought in America it was a little bit like that too, but you know, I think it's just also this duality that we've grown up in is just dissolving. It's starting to dissolve, which is fantastic. You know, I think we've all had. I mean, I didn't know it, but I just thought I was weird. But I've been questioning everything since I was about a little tot. You know, even the minister, I asked him questions and he didn't know how to answer them. And so I guess I've always felt a little bit alien, you know.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
but I also was subject to what you were talking about. But with my case, some of my worst experiences came from other women.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you know, that was devastating
Yeah.
and cruel, much more cruel in many cases. So, you know, I actually got to the stage where I preferred to have men as a boss than I did with women that had come from backgrounds of abuse, a lot of them. And so
Yeah.
they were very angry and very kind of damaged. So I just think we have to let go of all the duality, full stop,
Yeah.
and just be as we are. And I love your first bit here. It's the authenticity. And the duality needs to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And we had, as leaders, I love that you brought that up so clearly. As leaders, we hold the duality. We have to hold the duality because we're not above it. You know, we can think in terms of the fifth dimension, and I do practice all of that too. If I have something, let it go and send it to the fifth and all of that. Yet I'm still in the world of duality. I still live on this earth. And as much as we're rising, I believe that we're rising. And it's our choice that allows us to rise. It's still that internal um, passion, our purpose, our values that allow us to rise.
and we're lucky enough now that there's enough of us around to kind of team up and understand each other, like the groups we're in here, where we
Yes.
can express ourselves safely and understand each other safely, and then go out into the world feeling, you know, I mean, some of the leadership courses we're doing within the Noble Goldman have just been incredible, you know, that you don't need to worry about any of that anymore. You just need to be yourself. And I think a true leader needs everybody else as well. That we need all the different types, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm not good at everything.
Right.
And I don't profess to be. I need a good leader gathers a nice team around them that can do the things that they can't do, because we all got special. And going back to your individual, your uniqueness, I'm doing this with students right when they're little now. Who are you and what's your superpower? You
Oh,
know? Yeah, and it's
I
beautiful. That'll be a little bit about next week.
I love that. Well, I will be there. So, yes, thank you for that. And
Oh,
Tamara
I'll be
said
quiet.
we lose our soul. We drop our soul. So the kind of leadership that I work with, I have a beautiful course called Compassionate Leadership, and it follows around the medicine wheel. So we have in the North the way of the warrior, how we have to, and, to really have our courage and our strength and to be that warrior that carries our values and our purpose and stands for what we believe in. And the way of the visionary, holds our vision. We create our vision, and that vision is what allows us to rise above all this competition, duality, cruelty. And Julie said it so well. Even women had learn to be not themselves in the workplace, if we're really coming from that feminine power, which is the way of the South, the way of the healer, we're healing ourselves. We're holding a sacred space like this container to allow women to speak and to let go of that wound of abuse that we've been through for so many years. And we carry that in our DNA. Even though maybe it didn't happen to us or to women in our lineage, somewhere along that line, there has been abuse, and we carry that. And then coming into the West on the medicine wheel is the way of the teacher. So once we've gone through everything, it's not that we're not the teacher until we go through. Everything is really a spiral. It's not a sequential program of this leads to this, leads to this. It's not linear. It's very spiraling where each interacts with the other. And the teacher brings out that wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of our stories, of our resources, and how we share those together. We can't be the teacher without also being the student, the learner, and keeping that curious, inquisitive mind keeps us fresh like a child, to be in that place of mindful inquiry as we go through our lives. So let's see, I think I missed one little part here. Yeah. So the concept here that I want to bring out is called the SGE, or the sudden growth experience. So when I work with women, I call it transformational leadership, because transformation starts with me. And I can make little small incremental changes, like change what I have on, or change the way that I look, or change this or that about me. Yet it's that deep internal change that takes me back to my soul, that collects back all the parts of my soul that I've left behind and given up on and sacrificed and relinquished and pushed under the rug and locked in the closet, and all of those ways that we've taken from ourselves. And this concept, the sudden growth experience, is it's an attitude, and it's also a way of being. So I want to ask you to think about, when in your life have you experienced such a sudden growth that everything was different from that point on? You were just not the same. The world seemed like it changed. Your internal self started seeing life completely different than you saw it before. And this concept was developed by a teacher that I had from Chicago. He was from Chicago and also from Detroit, Clark Mustakas, who is no longer with us, but he was the founder of the Institute for Humanistic Psychology, which is the IHP. So humanistic psychology, back in the day, when that whole way of thinking began, he started looking at people having transformations, or these sudden growth changes that brought them to a whole new way of thinking and seeing their lives. So I want you to take a moment also. I'm going to do a little chime here while you're reflecting on where in your life did you wake up to a whole new way of being?
So I guess you're asking the group to comment if they have any experience of sudden growth in their lives and the aha moment.
Yeah, I want to.
Anyone? Anyone?
I just want to do this for a minute, and then I'll ask that.
I can say something.
Go ahead, Binta.
Sometimes the sound, we all know about sound healing. It takes us to a different place. So
Tamara,
I wanted
yes,
you
she has.
to share a sudden growth. So Tamara's hands up. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tamara.
Oh, I thought Benta was going to go. Is Benta going to go?
Go ahead, and then we'll go to Binta.
Okay.
Go ahead. I can go next. No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. I think my sudden growth was when, and I don't know if this applies, but like when my whole world fell apart.
Yeah.
And then I made a big, huge change in myself, and then everything came back together.
Yes. Yes, it definitely applies. And often that happens. We fall, we crumble, like, stories that I gave. I was here, I was there, this fell apart, that fell apart. And then all of a sudden, wow, something shifted and changed. I could go to that next level. Yes, thank you.
And it's almost like you have to experience that in order to find yourself again. I from just talking with so many other women, I find that it is major life experiences that actually change you. And it's, I'm like you, like every time I would hit a block, I'd go back to school, and so I'm like, okay, I'm missing something here. I'm missing something here. And I kept running up against a brick wall. And then, I don't know, it was like a spiritual awakening for me when everything else fell apart. And I kind of just decided to surrender my life to God. And that's when everything came back full circle. Like, still learning, still growing, but it's a different type of learning now. It's learning to help others, not just myself.
Wow, very good. So we're always learning and growing. I love that. Yeah, and it never stops. It's again that spiral journey that keeps going. It takes us deep within ourselves so that we can come out and share with others and then back to ourselves. So it's continual.
Thank you for that. And Binta, you have your hands up.
Oh, I can't see
Yes.
that.
I can't come on camera today, but this topic is very very touching to me, because I also experienced so much I don't know, judgment when I left my family, because coming from a different country and being with other people that you don't know, they always treated me like I'm from another planet. And it took a long time, all my life, when I was a young girl, I was taken away at a very young age to Europe and everything. So I was just being told what to do, and all that time I was not allowed to speak back, and so that kept happening until finally I came to New Orleans, and New Orleans is where everything just shifted. I started working at Whole Foods, where everybody was treating me like I was not human, or just like I would do the hardest job, and I'm always trying to prove myself that I'm not who you think I am. So I would work like I can't even hear myself speak, and I come home and I would just start crying on my husband, and he was like. So it wasn't until one day when I couldn't take it anymore, everything just bursted. Like I just started like letting it out, and I was like, "We're gonna go to HR, and I'm gonna So I started just like letting my voice be heard. And that just liberated me. But anyway, long story short, after I left that job, I ended up going to yoga practice where the teachers, that's where they created space for me to grow. Leadership is to be able to create space for another person to grow, to be who they are. And that is why I strive to not let other people feel like the way I used to feel before. Encourage people to be able to be who they are. Even if they're doing the smallest thing, give them courage and lift them up. And that is why we're all here to do the same thing. And like Julie said, now the world is a lot of people are beginning to wake up to their higher consciousness. So there's a lot of people like-minded people who are out there just cheering each other up. So we just keep doing the same thing here, and I'm just so grateful. That is why I'm able to grow the way I am. I mean, I used to be so scared that I developed thyroid, because I wasn't able to speak. So I had to have surgery. I took my thyroid out because I was suppressing. I couldn't speak. Wow. So everything shifted when I came here and I met my husband, and everything shifted. So I'm very grateful for that. But this is a very wonderful topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Binta. You shed so much light on this. And part of the way that we grow, I think you brought out, is through our shadows, through going through. So we're looking as women. Where are we time-wise, right, Rini? Rini, what is our?
It's we're at the 10 more minutes.
Okay, so
we're at the 7:50.
As women, to be a part of a whole new style of leadership, where we're balancing our compassion, the strength of our character. We're celebrating, like Binta said, celebrating ourselves as women and our uniqueness, empowering and communicating others, inspiring through our leadership, leading from our heart and our soul, a whole different way of leading and being fully you, who you are, no matter what that is, and that your power is in your uniqueness. So we look at self from many different ways, starting with our emotions. And I won't go into this whole thing, but I'll have that there for you to see. I'm going to go to the outer edges of the circle, because as leaders, we're emotionally and socially aware. We want well-being for not only ourselves, but for all of those who we're working with, we're leading, we're living with. It's not only about our performance, yet our performance really peaks and we come into our full potential because we're being truly authentic to who we are. So naturally, our performance rises, as Binta stated too. So we're able to perform to our highest in our full potential, whatever is full potential for you. And it's not a place that we get and we say, now I'm at full potential. Although I did have a student once who came to me and said, Dr. Janet, I think I'm self-actualized. So I thought that was really good. He said, because my life is full in all these areas. Everything that you're talking about, I feel very fulfilled in. Well, that is great. Let's reach that place where interpersonally, when we work with each other, in our own ability to manage our internal stress, our regulation. So I want to give you a way to self-regulate right now. And it's something that I've been really looking into. Binta and I come from that yoga background. I incorporate yoga into my leadership. And now I've been putting a lot of focus on understanding the vagus nerve, and how incredibly important that is to regulate our nervous system. So we just take our fists and kind of gently and pound that, kind of thump that over your lower abdomen. And just breathe in and out while you're doing that. And if you start the day this way, it starts putting that nervous system back in to regulation. Okay, and then let that rest. And then we move up right to the at your navel and pound there. Kind of thumping. We're going to get to the thymus in a minute. Less than a minute. So right at the navel, you can use both or one fist. Because all these stresses that we go through, and now right here at the thymus, thumping the thymus, we go into dysregulation from little triggers, little gremlins that creep in throughout a day without even noticing it. So when we have practices like yoga, like meditation, like this type of regulating back our nervous system. And how do you feel? Rini, I noticed you didn't follow along.
I just did the navel part. I didn't really do
And
this
how
part.
do you notice?
It's kind of hard to see because we don't really can see your whole posture.
It's just below the navel, like your abdomen, at
Yeah.
your navel, and then here at your chest. Just those three kind of places. Yeah. So how does that feel any different? And you may,
Let's open it up for other people to share that have not shared before. Lori, do you feel anything? Lori is muted. Oh, she's driving probably. Arlene,
and
did you
Julie,
try that?
thank you for being here. She said she has to leave.
Really, I've enjoyed it, but I've got to go straight away
Okay,
because I've got
thank you,
another one.
Julie.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Arlene? Some people can't speak. Sherry?
This is new for me, so I'm
I-
just being introduced to the concept. So not really able to share much about it. I'm just learning and listening. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. So I want to just go through this. We just have a few minutes. So there's so much emotional intelligence involved, and that's a whole different topic. But it always starts with self. So your highest level of emotional intelligence is your own self-awareness, coming to that authenticity of who you are. And looking at the difference between, there's always a fine line. What am I doing? Am I doing it for what? What's the intention? Or is it coming from my place of being? So am I doing it for some external accolade, external reward, external notification, respect, something, or is it just coming from me? So we'll get into that at another time. And also the shadow parts of who you are. Some of you mentioned that. Binta talked about that. When we go into that place where we're frightened, where we're afraid, frightened and unsure, insecure. I call it the tiger. It's that tiger that's coming at us. And facing that tiger is what gives us that courage to be ourselves. Our shadow aspects are part of who we are, the parts that have fallen. the parts that have broken, have made us who we are. So knowing ourselves from the inside out. There's also a drumming journey that people do. And we have rituals that take us into mask making and drumming and the rattle ceremonies that bring us back to those places within ourselves. I love using Johari window. I want to also acknowledge that I have a Transformational Leadership Academy, where if anyone wants another certification, you're welcome to join. And we delve into all of these topics, and you become certified in the niche of transformational leadership. So learning to look deep within yourself, going beyond your blind spots. I'm going to skip that. Storytelling, we've been doing that today. Creating that journey of your life, how you got to where you are today. What is your purpose? Being able to take that walking stick and walk your talk as you continue to tell your truth on this journey. So any habit that you would like to change, this is a simple way to break a habit, and change. Transformation always starts with our own internal change. So identify what that is that you want to change. Talk about it. Tell someone about it. Monitor your progress. Ask others for feedback. How am I doing with this? Celebrate your success along the way. Always celebrate. Even celebrate when you don't have success. It doesn't have to be with alcohol. It can be a walk in the park. And then start over again. So I particularly am on a mission to find at least 3 women leaders who are ready to exceed their leadership goals. So if that's something that interests you, if you'd like to have another conversation about this, direct message me, or Rini knows how to get a hold of me. I'm also in the group. I'm going to become more active in the group. I love this group. Yeah. And it's kind of early in the morning for me. My husband is not well. Some of you know that he went through kind of a stroke that was not identified for a long time. And it's been difficult. So mornings are generally not the easiest for me, but I absolutely love this group. So I'd love to talk with you more. Anyone who wants to reach out to me, let's have a chat. And I'd love to be here again.
Thank you so much. I know we ran out of time, but does anyone have any question or want to say something before we close? Arlene?
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Dr. Janet. When you spoke about the Johari window, that's something that I definitely believe is of value to anybody. When I was in my master's program, delved into that quite a bit. That's, that you have those 4 quadrants, and there are things about ourselves that we can see, that everybody can see, but there are things about ourselves that we can't see, that other people can see. And then there are things that they can see, that we can see, that they can't see. So there are all these different quadrants. And I think that for me, that was insightful in that I grew up being very forthright and pushing and, get my degrees and, move forward in my career. And I did not spend as much time making nice with other people. So I have friends that I grew up with from childhood, but I didn't spend a lot of time investing in new friends and, in chit-chatting at the water cooler, because my culture did not impress a whole lot of value on that. But when I looked at the Johari window, I realized that the time that we spend with other people socializing, even if it's not about quantum physics, it's merely about how's your day and how are things doing, that there actually is value in creating those relationships Even though maybe in times past, I thought that those relationships, you know, like how's the weather and that kind of thing, was frivolity. But when you look at the Johari window, you realize that those relationships actually teach us information about ourselves, especially since sometimes those people are not of our culture and are not of our mindset. And so the value is in going outside of your own culture and communicating with other people who can see things and see the world in a different way, and not being just locked in to who we are now and where we are and our friends and our people and our way of thinking, because there is no transformation in staying the same. Transformation means that we're going out of who we are and what we think is right and actually venturing out into those other places. And now those may be the dark spaces that you mentioned, or the shadows that you mentioned, just the fact that it's not necessarily our norm. So that's my challenge. My challenge would
love that.
Step out of where you are now and the people that you are with now and venture into new cultures and new ways of living. Because as my mom would say, my mom passed away, none of us is getting out of here alive.
Yes.
Every time moving forward and venturing and seeing what else there is to offer.
That's what my greatest teachers said, that we're not
like,
getting out of here alive.
You have the same conversations with the same friends. We go to the same vacation spots. Come on, guys, let's shake it up and let's transform. Let's move forward and see what else is out there and who we can truly be and how we can be the best version of ourselves. Thank you.
So amazing. I love it.
I love that.
Thank you.
Oh, wow, Arlene, that was great, you know, to get out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, we can't grow in our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
So we're past, we're 5 minutes after, so we gotta close this. Thank you everyone for your great shares. And Dr. Janet, this is an amazing topic. We'll invite you again in the future. This is great. Thank you everyone. And
bye, Lori. Bye.
Yes, and have a great day, all of you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.